All right, everybody, I think we have the live stream up and going. I'll look to Ken to confirm here. All right. Well, welcome everybody to our 2023 Senior Capstone Showcases for the Software Development Program here at Green River. We're happy to have many of our students and some of our instructors here as well. And we know we have some other folks joining us online. So to all of you, welcome. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Tyler Schrock. I'm a software development instructor here at Green River College. I'm joined today by Keller.
I'm Keller. I'm an associate faculty here at the college for about a year. Also a graduate of the SD program about 3 years ago now. So it's really exciting to be here today.
Awesome. And also today, monitoring our YouTube live stream, and also one of the instructors from Capstone 1 is Ken.
Good to be here.
Yeah, so thanks to Ken Hang, to Keller, and also want to thank the MINT program. So Mentors in Tech, headed up by Kevin Wang, as well as some other folks there. Those mentors have, some of them have participated directly in some of these projects. Others of them have worked with these students in other aspects as well. So a huge thanks to their contribution throughout all of these projects here. So today we're going to hear from about 8 different teams. Each team is made up of about 4 students there. We also want to recognize that in addition to the teams that are presenting today, we do have some individuals who are working full-time, who are doing that in place of this capstone class, as well as a handful of individual projects that have also been done as well. So we're celebrating with those folks today, although we're just going to be hearing from our teams. So each team has worked on some software over the last 3 to 6 months, depending on the type of project they're working on, creating either some type of web application, software tool, or making contributions to open source software. So open source software, the concept there is that rather than one group or a small group that works to create something, it is a large collectively owned piece of software by people all across the country or all across the world. It could be hundreds or even thousands of people that are making contributions. So if you hear some of our teams today talking about open source software, they are adding kind of a small portion to this large project that is very collectively owned. Other teams are going to be talking a little bit more about building something from scratch or building something for an individual or a small organization. So we're very excited to hear from each of these teams. Each team will have about 5 minutes to present and then several minutes for question and answer afterwards. So we're excited to have you all here. And again, save your questions or share those in the YouTube chat if you're viewing that way as well. We'll try to field those and pitch those to the teams as we go through. So with that, we have our list of teams here. We're going to start it off with the Flutter Cupertino team. So when you're ready, we'll invite you forward and let you begin.
Good evening. We are the Advised Flutter Cupertino team. We did 2 projects. One is Advised, which is for our Green River College advisors, which is a scheduling system for the undergraduates. We also did Flutter Cupertino, which is an open source from Google. And we have our team here. We have William, myself, Cherie, Patrick, and also Kenny. A special thanks to our the Flutter team and our instructors and also our advisors, and especially our mentors. So this is the Advised. This is the first project we worked on. And the problem we saw was that it was repetitive in terms of papers that were being used and maybe being lost. It was time consuming for the advisors at Green River College, and also it was not centralized with all the advisors to be able to use. So we then created the Advised tool, which is a web platform.
For our solution, we created this web tool that allowed advisors to change or to resolve the issue of having to remake a plan for each student by using standardized plans. This could be done by using their starting quarter. both the quarter and the year. You could load a plan in here and then it would populate with all the classes that the students would be required to take. You're able to add as many years as you need for the student to complete their education. This is the advisor view, but we also created a student plan view. In that student plan view, they are able to just view their schedule, but not make changes, and they're also able to print out their schedule for their own use. We created a admin page as well for an administrator to come in and with a login, be able to view all the plans that were created. So they could reference back when needed. This is also the area where an advisor would go in and make changes to the standardized plans when inevitably those classes change. Our advisor tool helped resolve some of those issues that the paper copy had by making reusable content. It saved advisors a lot of time, and it is all located in a centralized location that each advisor can use instead of using their own.
So for our second project, we contributed to Flutter. Flutter is an open source tool developed by Google in order to create apps that work on all platforms. Currently, there's one product that uses it, it's Google Pay, and then BMW, ByteDance, and eBay also use Flutter. So the date picker is a tool inside of Apple phones that allows you to choose a date like you were flipping through a digital calendar. And then our responsibility was to make that tool more aligned with the current iOS tool.
One of the issues that we noticed was that in iOS, when you are scrolling on your date picker, it only returns a value to you. Every time you actually select which date you want, but in Flutter, this is different where it's just continually returning content to you, which is not useful. And while digging into this, we found that the problem was going to be far more complicated to resolve than initially thought. In our research, we ended up looking into it, creating a design document that was shared with the Flutter community. And that document then was put up for discussion at a forum put on by Google so they could discuss the pros and cons of our proposal that we submitted. It's an ongoing discussion, but our documentation remains a good resource for those moving forward to be able to resolve this problem.
So while we were working on that design discussion, we were also working on a few smaller, less complex issues. So here's an example of an issue that was presented that was a little bit more straightforward. So there are only 3 formats available for the date picker, and I added a new format. It was requested by the Flutter developers. They want, in the newer versions of iOS, they have a month and year mode. And so I added that by referencing the date picker, and I removed just by removing the date column, which it was a lot more complicated than it sounds. But I tested each behavior as I went through it. And after everything was good, I submitted my changes to be reviewed. And then after a few revisions, it was merged and is now part of the Flutter framework. So overall, we had an amazing experience with Flutter. We got to learn how to use open source software and contribute to a larger community of developers. And we improved the alignment of the Flutter Cupertino and iOS by proposing our design solution to the community and allowing further discussion, and then also by submitting more simple issues like the month-year mode, which was recognized as a notable commit by the Flutter community. So overall, that is our projects, and thank you. Any questions?
All right, thank you so much. So there is a short delay between what YouTube can see and ours. So we'll kind of go for a question or two from the room first, and then we'll kind of kick it back to Ken if he wants to voice any questions from the YouTube live stream. I'll start with a question. What was it like balancing two projects? Were you able to take any knowledge or skills from your first project and transfer it to the second? Or what was it like to kind of make that transition partway through this course?
I think dealing with the skills we gained from the first project, dealing with the client definitely transferred over, but everything other than that, I think was pretty different.
I think the biggest part from us was establishing that trust as a team and being able to take that into the next project without having to start from scratch.
Yeah, having a good communication, that was a big thing for all of us, knowing each and every role of each developer and project manager and how we work together.
Very cool. Keller or someone in the room, anybody else have any other questions for this? Yes.
What's the notable, what you said is a notable contribution or?
Yeah, so Flutter, I'm not sure exactly the interval, but it's either a week or so, they recognize notable commits that were contributed to the Flutter community. And so I guess that specific commit was recognized by the community as notable.
Yeah, I'll throw a question out there. Was there an intimidation factor when you started the project that you were contributing to something that so many people had eyes on and so many people are kind of, using? How did you all feel about that? And did it change over the time?
I would say initially it felt a little intimidating to contribute to a project that more senior developers that work on it. I kind of felt like we would get in there and just kind of feel like amateurs. But I think the further that we got into it, it was less that it seemed like that.
I think it helped too that our mentor was kind of helping us along that way. And also we were able to get faster response times because she was sharing that with her team. So that felt less scary than having to post it in the Discord for Flutter and then everyone ignores you and you assume that you're doing everything wrong. And
But I think also they have a very rigorous testing system. So every time you submit changes, it goes through hundreds of tests. So you can be confident that it actually works when it goes through.
Any other questions?
What surprised you the most from this whole process?
I would say just how much effort goes into planning your contributions and how much discussion goes into every minor change in the framework. I think it's interesting to see that from an outside perspective because it's so large and there's so many people who are working on it. So you're seeing all these different people coming together and discussing, this small change that we're making to the design. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting going from a project where we control everything from top to bottom to a project where we basically have to ask permission from everyone to make just the slightest little change.
Well, we worked with our mentor at the beginning of the program. We were looking at related issues, which is how we landed on the day picker. And in GitHub, they have an issue tracking system. So we're able to look at all of the available issues and then filter by related issues.
All right, team. Well, with this, we want to say congratulations and thank you so much for sharing your work with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next up, we'll welcome up our fitness studio team.
The 23 in the live stream right now.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, for those in the room here, feel free if you want to jump into Basecamp and share out that live stream. Just be careful if you pull up the live stream that you do mute your device because we will get a lot of feedback in the room.
All right, good afternoon, guys. We are Refitness Studio team, and let's get started with our showcase. On this slide should be our team member with Gonek, Toby, me, Vaughn, and Daniel. I'm gonna skip to Gonek for that.
Thank you, Paul. So the issue we took on in the beginning of this capstone was our current client, Jessie, owns a studio gym in Spokane, Washington. And she currently did not at the time have a front desk receptionist to handle any of her gym clients registration, payment, or tracking their membership expiration date. So for example, if someone were to buy a membership, it expires 6 months from the date of purchase. And in some cases, Jesse actually had to reach out to that person by phone number, text them, and then ask for payment. So you can imagine how tedious that would be. It was not only just for that, but it was also editing their information as well. So if somebody were to quit the gym, she had to just, surf through a whole binder because she was just looking pages and pages. That's how she was currently tracking it. So what we did was currently we just made a web application that served as a front desk receptionist. And so here's our very first rendition of our site at the beginning. And this was our very first rough draft. You can see it was very confusing, and hand it over to Toby to show him how we condensed this.
This is, sure. Yeah, just move on to this. All right, thank you, Gurnik. So yeah, we ran into a lot of road bumps, a lot of issues as we were making our project. And one of those biggest ones was just having really high expectations for our clients and just coming to a bunch of realizations that we didn't need to put as much effort as we thought we needed to. In fact, a good chunk of this project would have been fairly easy if we didn't have very high expectations from the beginning. Example of this was implementing different payment platforms into our project. So for example, in one of our client meetings, we were talking to Jessie, and we initially thought she wanted us to integrate all these different payment platforms directly into our website, including, so for example, how eBay integrates PayPal into their website as well as their mobile application. And the reality was she only needed to know one piece of information, and that was what each client was paying with exactly. Another one too was having us integrate Signup Genius into our website, which is basically just an online easy use event planner. All right, to the next slide.
Next slide should be our demo for that.
Yep, I can enter it. So it's a control click.
Yeah.
There we go. All right, so I'll be running the demo here. So this is what the clients will see when they first walk into the studio. Before it would have been a binder with a bunch of stacks of paper inside. Now it'll be this sign-in page that will be on a tablet. So if you can see here, there's also a navigation bar at the top as well, where you can go to sign-in page and also a registration page to create a new account with Refit the Studio, as well as an admin page. So here, if we were to register as a new client, it would ask you to put in your email address, as well as your full name, as well as a phone number. We're just going to put in a very real phone number. And we're going to select our payment method. Here, we'll just use PayPal for now. And then this type section here basically lists all the different packages that Jessie offers when you want to be a member at the studio. In this case, let's just pick the intro punch card for now, and we'll register as a new client. It'll take us back to the sign-in page. So if we try to sign in as a member of Refit the Studio, there's also a checkbox here that you have to check off. If you click on it, it'll show a legal waiver. When you clicking this button means you agree to the waiver. Once you click on the waiver, it should allow you to sign in, and then you'll come to the account info page where it'll show you different fields of information such as your email address, the balance of classes you have available, when your account expires, etc. There's also a check-in button here. If you click on the check-in button at the very top, it'll take you back to the sign-in page for the next client to check in. If we go to the admin page, ooh, that's a lot of people. Oh yeah, there's a search bar at the upper right-hand corner. Let's try to look for our name here. So you can see here, this is our new account that we just created under my name. For some reason, I don't know why it says -1 balance. So what we can do is we can edit this row through our client edit form. You can also see here for some of the date fields that if you click on it, it'll open up a calendar, which will allow you to, what's it called? Input dates directly into the edit client form. And from here, let's change that to 0. If we click update, it should update the admin table. There we go. Let's search for our name again. So you can see here that our balance is 0. And let's say in the case that we no longer go to the studio and Jessie wants to delete our account from the database. If we click on the delete button at the far right, it'll show a window asking you to, if you want to confirm deleting this client, because data is a very precious thing, and once you delete, you usually can't get it back and retrieve it. So from here, we're just gonna enter in our email to confirm. And we're gonna click the delete button. And we shouldn't be on this table anymore. Let's try looking for a name. Yep, no matching records found. All right. And that's it for our demonstration. I'll hand it off to Daniel to close our presentation.
We were gonna take questions, but we want to do a special thanks to Tyler and Keller and Ken for helping guide us through this project. Any questions?
Again, thanks so much, team. We're gonna.
I'm curious from an implementation standpoint, there's a lot of features in this app. What was like most challenging to add to the project?
I think for me, it was just getting everything wired together. That's probably the hardest part. I think we spent more time just trying to make sure everything was connected, everything was wired in the background, rather than like doing things like writing the layout or implementing features such as, the dates in the update form, etc.
I know from a little bit of your project that your client was very much involved in giving a lot of feedback. What were maybe some of the times when that feedback was really positive and helpful, or what were some of the challenging pieces of feedback that you got from your client?
I think one of the most challenging pieces of feedback we got was we initially wanted to get her thoughts on an older layout. I think it was this exact layout actually. Yeah. And the most she said was, "It's good." And that's not very helpful, especially when you're trying to gauge as much feedback from your client. Yeah. But as we got better with client communicating with Jesse, we eventually got to a point where we got much more concise answers, which helped us out a lot, especially as we were finishing our project.
Yeah. Anything else stick out as far as working with the client?
Not really. I just wanted to give a big shout out to Tyler because he actually jumped into one of our client meetings with Jesse, and he was able to gauge her and ask like the correct questions, because we felt like we were asking the correct questions in the first few meetings, so we didn't really feel like we could build on. So thank you, Tyler, for that.
We had an issue at that time where we thought she wanted us to create the whole payment system on the website, and Tyler kind of helped us out to narrow the scope for us to make it a little bit easier and better on time for us.
Sure. Yeah, definitely happy to help. It's definitely clear that you did all the work to get it working. So that's very cool to see. Yeah. I'll open it up. Anything from YouTube or anything from the room?
No questions from chat?
No questions on YouTube yet.
YouTube's quiet so far. So those folks tuning in on YouTube, yeah, don't be shy. We're happy to take your questions and anything like that. Open up to the room. Any questions for this team?
I'll put one out there. I mean, it sounds like the clarification of the scope and narrowing the scope down, was that like, would you say that was like kind of a critical turning point of the project where things felt like it was maybe very murky, not achievable, to all of a sudden you kind of saw like a finish line in sight? Was that like a turning point?
Yeah, yes, definitely. Because initially we thought the scope was very big, so we had a very vague idea of what Jesse exactly wanted. But as we narrowed the scope down, we had a much more concise idea of what exactly Jesse wanted, and it became a lot easier to make the project from there. Oh, we got a question from Adam.
To that first change to your guys' scope, did you have any further changes to your scope, reductions in what you need to accomplish, or after that one major change, was it pretty straight shot to the finish line?
I didn't say we
added things to the scope after that, but we added stuff, but like it was mainly because we got other stuff actually done. Because before the scope was so big, we couldn't figure out what to grab hold of and start doing. There was so much to do. And it was getting done.
After eliminating a large scope piece, you were able to finish the parts that were a requirement and then add on further smaller components, which improved your guys' project overall because of that. Yeah, very nice.
Comment from YouTube saying it looks great.
Thank you.
I think your reflection here at the end about like managing scope on the project, I mean, that is like, I think it's a huge takeaway for many of our projects, and you'll see it again and again in your future work, where it's like, you have this problem that just looks like it's not solvable, But if you can break it down and figure out what's the core and what's that one piece we can start with and deliver, then you see momentum start building on the project. So that's just my own experience, but I'm very happy to kind of see that y'all kind of came to that realization too.
All right. Again, team, congratulations. Thanks so much for your hard work. Appreciate you presenting and sharing with us today.
Nice.
All right. Next up, we have our Evergreen officials team.
Welcome everybody, this is Evergreen Officials, your new soccer referee solution. My name is Xavier, this is Devin, we got Renee and Cameron. And then what we're looking to do is, so the previous tool, our current tools that are for officials to sign themselves games are pretty out of date and they don't like, and some of them are good, but like they don't provide all the things that officials need. So our goal was to make an easier to use tool for officials to be assigned games. So not only assign themselves, but they can also keep track of what games they're assigned to as well. Pass this on to Cameron for the next slide.
So when looking at figuring out what kind of a solution that we wanted to do, we went with a dashboard layout that kind of puts all of the information in a really easy to read, easy to navigate, and easy to understand format. When it comes to the actual layout of what the games will look like, we had some rough sketches, rough drafts that we got from our clients, and just how the information wanted to be displayed, because there is a lot of information that we need to display to the officials, such as are there other officials already assigned to the position you want, game information, all that kind of stuff. So with that, we went through and we created the layout as you see in the demo here that has both resizing elements and searchable and sortable navigation points for key information like match numbers and date and time fields. And on the far right there, you can also see a little magnifying glass, and that magnifying glass opens up a pop-up or a modal. And for that modal is essentially where all of the functionality for how officials get their games is. And this is sort of a rough sketch, again, that we got from our clients that displays sort of how that layout and design is going to look like. And we converted this kind of rough sketch that's got things all over the place into this modal that is very easy to read, very clean, and also has the ability for the officials to assign and unassign themselves from their games and move to other positions if they need to do that. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Kevin.
So to test our server code while we're writing it, we used an application called Postman, which allowed us to simulate what's going on in a browser when you click a button. And it will allow us to set up any data we want, send it to the server, and then our server code processes it and then sends a response back. And here you can see an example of that, hitting send. And then that data at the bottom gets sent off to the server, comes back, and we check the result. And this had an impact on our project because it allowed us to test our server code quickly and ensure that any error messages or success messages would show up when we needed them. And off to Renee.
All right. So we were originally looking at free SQL database as a repository for information for the databases. We ran into some unexpected issues and the server went down for about a week. We got no response. So I went into research mode and presented our group with a list of other free or low cost database sites. We are ultimately gone with HelaHost, and it seems to be working quite well. We're able to access it. We're able to get responses from the admins. And yeah, that's pretty much it on the databases. And we'd like to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you to our clients, Devin and Cody. They have given us so much feedback and it's been an absolute joy working with them. We also would like to give special thanks to our instructors, Tyler, Ken, and Keller. You guys have been very helpful, especially when there were times that the scope may have appeared to be too big. And, you know, trying to reassure them, no, this is the only scope we're looking at. So thank you all. Are there any questions, comments?
All right, we'll give you the initial. Yeah, great work. So I wanted to raise a question that I was curious about. So I'm sure that the database is pretty central to what you're doing there. What was it like to lose access or to kind of run into a wall at that situation? How are you able to assess and move forward when you would lose something that's kind of core to your project?
So the database, we never officially got kicked off of the database. But the support site essentially went down. So I couldn't log into the database to change like columns or change fields or, change parts of the database that we needed to change to move forward. So it was kind of a mixed bag in the fact that like we still have the data and we can still use it and see it on the front end, but we can't actually do anything productive with it. So we were just kind of stuck at that point. So, going from being completely stuck and kind of frustrated because I can't even access the contact page to get a hold of the people in charge of the database to being able to transition all of that into a new platform and do that in under a day, was actually kind of surprising that we didn't have any hiccups along the way, but
wow.
Yeah.
Really, really quick turnaround.
Yeah.
Open up to the room. Any questions, comments from the team? Or Kevin? Sure.
Yeah, so I guess during that week that the database was down, a week or two that the database was down, what was your process in moving forward with the project? Like still contributing to the project while not being able to access that information? Or I guess login.
So part of that was checking different sources to see if it was actually a them issue and not an us issue. Because the last thing we would want to do is start this whole migrating to a new database. And it's literally just an issue with like our computers or like our end. So it was a few days of just making sure like, okay, this is actually an issue with their end and there's no other contact that we can get in with them. So we need to start looking at other alternatives. And so we gave ourselves, what was it, 2-3 days?
3 days.
3 days or so of looking at other alternatives, how well supported they were, what their cost requirements were compared to like database sizes and stuff like that, and seeing if it would fit our need before we ultimately picked one and went with that platform. But we had a few fallback options if we needed to.
I think we also have maybe a client or clients in here. Do you have any comments or questions or anything you'd like to put up to the team?
Yeah, I mean, well done. I've already seen the product. I've had my hands on the product already. Thank you for walking me through it 2 days ago.
I think so, yeah.
As myself and Devin stressed at the very beginning, we don't really care if it's pretty looking. We don't really care if you don't hit all of our targets in our scope. We just care about the functionality because we want it to be as functional as possible, and you guys knocked that out of the park. So well done, and congratulations on graduating.
Okay, and I think we have another comment or question.
Yeah, although our client said they didn't care about the layout. Comment from YouTube saying the colors, layout, and the overall aesthetic are actually quite appealing. And another comment out here saying the database issue is good real world experience and nice job adapting. I want to double down on that one. I think that's something that you'll all see going forward as well, is that when you start relying on third party, tools and services, it makes quick work when the service works, but when it doesn't work, then all of a sudden it becomes a fire that you have to kind of handle. So, when you're selecting third-party tools and products and services, a lot of attention kind of goes into, hey, is this thing going to be supported and sustained? Because, if it's not, who's going to own that fire? It's going to be us. Right? So, yeah, nice work, team.
Yeah. Also, it sounds like your team started with you have a very large vision that you're working with. I'd be curious, it sounds like you were able to narrow it down to deliver a lot of actual value. I'd be curious what that process looked like. How'd you pick what to implement? How'd you get to the most important?
The client came in and basically said this, this is kind of what we want. It's gigantic and it's completely unrealistic to expect this in 6 months. So the process was sort of, I am already working on these parts, right, on my own. So then you guys as a team, I want you guys to focus on this. And then I'm going to give you a bullet list. I think there was 15 items on it. And it was if you get to it, great. If you don't, that's okay. But, just try to hit these points as you're going through. As many as you get done, that's awesome. But you are only focusing on this small portion of it.
All right, team. Again, congratulations. Thanks for sharing such hard work with us today. And yeah, thanks again. All right, to hit the halfway mark through our presentations, we're going to go to the Medicare Tracker team. Medicare Tracker.
Wait, is it the green or college one or the mentors? Green college.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. I am Facsimile. That's Steven, joining us through Zoom. We are a team of 3 developers working on this project. Our client is Keith Hostler. He's the founder of Hospital Management. The goal of Hospital Management is that to provide healthcare management to physicians. The way to do this is that they make sure that the proper tools and information are available so that physicians can have a better relationship with their patients. So the Medicare Tracker is a tool for looking up excluded employees. So what that means is that healthcare employers are able to search up employees and see whether they're excluded or they're included within the Medicare exclusion database, which is currently resides on the CMS government website. It allows healthcare employers to also retain that information so that after they create an account and look up a name, when they go back to that page at a later time, they can be able to see the data that they previously looked up. And then I would head it over to Chisholm.
So thank you, Facsimile. As far as the project goes, the goal was to save time where a user would have to look up a client, an excluded client excluded from a Medicaid or Medicare, or employee excluded from a Medicare, and have that data living in the back database and as well as the front end. The issue we had to tackle was on the government website. When you query your database, you have the results returned to you, but as soon as you exit the browser, there is nothing else to show that you have queried some names. Next slide. This is our solution here. With the Medicare Tracker application, you're able to query all of your employees you feel or you know or you want to see if they've been excluded from Medicare. And as far as those results live on your front end or on your page, you're able to exit and return to see the same results you have queried without really necessarily having to do a second query on those names. Our highlights and our breakthroughs and features that matter most to us. Through this project, we were able to upload and read our CSV files. And we were also able to import the downloadable database, which is the CSV file onto our client's database. And our users could see the results from their past queries, which is a major breakthrough for us. Parts of the realizations of pivots and tweaks or things we ran into during the project development was we were kind of torn between choosing PHP as a programming language versus Python. Being that we have an in-depth knowledge of PHP and given the time frame we had to learn a different programming language, we decided to settle for PHP. And PHP being a straightforward and easy to use language compared to other programming scripting languages, that's another reason for our choice of PHP. And looking at the websites we have, major websites, we see that 8 out of 10 websites use PHP as a backend programming language. In terms of speed and scalability, we have PHP performing over Python, and it's pretty much easy to manage PHP codes. For task scheduling, our client wanted us to have a process whereby the file uploads would be done automatically, but then it was a major challenge because considering the file size and the resources he had available, he mentioned running other businesses on the web hosting. Based on that fact, we couldn't go further with the cron job, also known as a task scheduling. And I will pass it on to Steven for the demo.
All right, so we can go ahead and that. All right, so when we open up the website for our client, we're met with the landing page where we can either log in or register for a new account. So what I'm going to do is log into an existing account that is under an administrator. Ooh. We've got some inline error messages in case there's a hiccup like that. So once we get logged in as an administrator, we're given a couple of different options. One of which is to upload that CSV file that we were talking about previously. And then once that is uploaded and imported, then that gets submitted to our database. And then inside of here, we're also able to see a list of registered users that are inside of, or that are registered, or that have an account registered for this platform. And then that allows our client Keith to look at everybody who's already in there, and then filter out if there's anybody who doesn't belong in there as well. So then I will go ahead and log out of the administrator account and then log into a standard users account. Sorry, information. All right, so once we're logged in as a standard user or a user that's using the platform, we can go ahead and query that previously updated or previously submitted CSV file. So if we look up, actually, we'll go ahead and look up my own name. And then that will give us a little bit of information. So it shows the first and last name on here. And then thankfully, I'm not found on the excluded Medicare database. But if I look up somebody, we'll go with James Brown on here. There are a few different James Browns who exist who are excluded from Medicare. And that gives us the first, middle, last name, and then the city and state that they're associated with, as well as a status saying that it was found through that CSV file. And then that does also show a last query date and timestamp for that. And then going full circle, once the user goes, we'll say the user goes home or goes home, comes back for work the next day, and they want to log back in. The solution that we came up with, or the initial problem that we were solving, was not having any of this information saved for the next time that they logged in. But with the solution that we did come up with, we were able to implement that as a feature, and all of the queries will be saved from each individual employee. And that will wrap up the demo. Oh, and I apologize. We do also have a forgot password feature implemented in case a user does forget that.
And once they enter in a valid email address, then it does send a confirmation email that you do have to go through. Recovery link expires after 5 minutes. And we will go ahead and go back to here. On this. So we would like to close out the demonstration with that and give a huge thank you to Keith, our clients, Keller, Ken, and Tyler for making this all possible and giving us the opportunity to work on this project as a whole.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Sure. I was curious, there's parts in here where like you have the email link, for instance, it's like expiring after 5 minutes. Are there other areas like how did security play a role in your understanding of like the software, the things you implemented? Security actually isn't too big of an issue because all of this information is public data. Like you can just go on the cms.gov website and just look up this information. So it wasn't entirely like a huge security issue, but it does offer a low level of security. So not everybody can just like jump onto the website and just like start querying things. You have to like register for an account. Well, I guess like more specifically, if you are storing like user passwords and then logging in, right? Is that something you've considered, right? It's in developing this, there's a way that those are secured. Oh, yes. Yeah, I mean, aside from I don't believe that you're able to access I can't just like get the password or anything like that, or like find out that information from the registered users unless you're, I guess in this case, like an administrator that wanted to like look into the database.
Also to add to that, when we're storing the password on our database is that they're not in plain text, so they're all hashed before they're stored in the database. So even if someone possibly type the entire system, they won't be able to directly see the user's passwords.
Yeah, I'll put a question in. Did the team use libraries, research libraries to kind of help do some of the work, or did you end up deciding to do it all from scratch? Kind of curious.
Mainly towards having to read the Excel file, which is a massive file, by the way. It has about 70,000 rows of data in it. We look for other options, other languages that we can use, other, like you mentioned, libraries. Unfortunately, none came in the language that we ended up using, which was PHP, but PHP did have a direct way to read Excel files, so we decided to go to that route. It was workable, and we already started implementing it, PHP in the project already.
Yeah. Chisholm, go ahead.
Yes, I'm coming. Another option we had was to go the Python route using Django, but then given the time frame we had, it wasn't something we could have implemented in that time frame. And again, there's a lot of things that could go wrong with cron jobs, which is something really beyond our scope and skill set. And finally, I think we all wanted to work with a programming language we were very confident with, which is PHP, and which, like any of us, could run into an issue and have the other person helping to debug. Those were more of the reasons why we chose PHP as our programming language.
I'll raise a question. What surprised you most about working on this project?
I would say, well, it was a good thing that we had a real client to work with. And as far as the scope goes, when we looked at it, we were so excited about jumping into it and working on it. But as along the line, we realized that there was more to what we saw. And it was pretty good that we had a flexible client who was pretty much understanding of our skills and our levels and was very ready to work with us.
Yeah, one thing I want to add to that is the issue of communication. Once you're working in a group, people have different perspectives on how they interpret things. So if the client gives a feedback, one person could interpret it a different way, another person could interpret it another way. So if the communication is not clear, you can very easily have someone do something whereas the rest of the group wasn't trying to go that route. So it creates a backlog or a backup for the project. So yeah, figuring stuff about communication was probably, we actually had issues with that, but we were able to figure things out later. So communication was definitely up there when it comes to complication.
And essentially just being able to like take the client's product or like their vision of this product and then what they say in English to us, like, hey, do this, then we have to be able to like take that and develop that for them in the way that they specifically wanted, rather than like, oh, I'm just going to create this website all by myself or whatever. And it has nothing to do with like what the client wants.
Yeah, quick question, YouTube here. Were there any additional kind of filtering things to help find users? Because I think your query showed a lot of James Browns. Yeah.
So I believe that's, I can log back in here and check it out.
I think the question was, would you build it based on location or based on eligibility criteria perhaps?
So this table does filter. You can filter by city, last name, which is, I believe, is just going to be in descending order, whether it's like A through Z kind of thing. We can check to see who has been found and who has not been found. And then we can also search for, we'll say James Wayne Brown specifically, which will eventually populate in that field. Or if, I believe if we just look up Wayne as well. So there are filter options with that. That does make it a little bit easier to find the exact person that you're looking for.
Thank you.
Also, during our conversation with the client, he mentioned that security wasn't really a big issue for us. For the distinguishing the query results we have, it's possible to have an employee with the same first name, middle name, and last name. We also ask questions in the light of, do we have access to the social, which was a way to distinguish or query further if that's the exact client we're looking for. But because we're being very careful in handling such sensitive information, that's beyond the scope of what we have built.
Team, again, congratulations. Thanks for all your hard work and thanks for sharing with us today. All right. So next up, we have the Flutter Web team, Flutter Web. Don't forget to switch to Mint as well.
Oh, so okay, I thought. Thanks. Okay.
You grab it on the green bar and
Okay. Right. Hi, we are the Flutter Windows team. Our members are myself, Matt, Devin, Alex, and Jasper. Our project was to find issues on the Flutter framework, fix them, and have the fix merged with the main code, showing our contribution to the framework. So what is Flutter? Flutter is an app building software created by Google. Flutter is used by many companies to make their apps. It is fast and can make apps that look good. Flutter is an open source tool that allows developers to create apps for computers and mobile devices. So what makes Flutter software unique is that you can create an app once, run it on any device. This allows developers to manage a single code base versus managing multiple code bases for the same app. Make an app creation for different devices much easier and faster. And I'll pass it off to Alex.
Those are all the things that use Flutter, companies that use Flutter on the Flutter page.
So how do we contribute to an open source project? So the first thing we need to do is get connected with the project owners and follow any necessary onboarding guides. Once we have taken care of that, we need to set up our development environment to be able to edit code in the framework and get familiar with the tool itself. Once we then have a basic understanding of how the tool works, we need to then locate a bug that is appropriate for our current skill level. And when we have found a bug that we feel is appropriate and approachable, we will then need to locate it in the framework by creating various tests. And then we will troubleshoot various solutions to the bug until we have a fix in mind. When we do get a fix, we will then send the work over to the project owner for a code review, and we'll take all their feedback and make necessary changes until the review goes through. When the review goes through, then the changes then get integrated into the tool, and then we can repeat that process by finding a new bug and starting all over again. And now pass it on to Cruiser.
What was this experience like? We had to work with a very large group of contributors from all over the world. It ended up being kind of like working a remote Zoom job with many of the same benefits and limitations. Lots of virtual and digital communications, and the inability to go visit someone in their office when you have an issue. The project also uses a very large repository, more than 10,000 files and 10,000 open issues for the project at this time. The repositories for all the code and the documentation that it uses. Because of this and the number of contributors and that they're all over the world in different time zones, we had to make constant use of special tools to help keep track of everyone's work so we don't accidentally overwrite someone else's work. In particular, we used GitHub for versioning tools. GitHub is basically just a repository hosting tool. Also, for most of us, all the programming languages and the tools that we used for this project were new and we had never used them before. So we had to go through a time-consuming and sometimes tedious, but ultimately rewarding process before we were able to even contribute. I'll now pass it off to Jasper.
We came up with a few challenges, and some of the biggest challenges we had were communication with our mentors, which were also our clients in this case, as well as the overall Flutter community. In regards to our mentors, we reached out later than we should have in regards to getting unblocked. And we learned a valuable lesson in reaching out as soon as possible in some cases. And when it comes to the Flutter community, we had some confusion when we were trying to work on bugs that turned out to be assigned to someone else in the Flutter community. And there was also the steep learning curve of the Flutter code base itself. There are over 10,000 files, and some of these files can have thousands of lines of code. And you have to find very small changes in some cases to fix these bugs. And it might take us about 6 months or more to become comfortable working with it, which was actually decent in that it would be reflected like that in the real world. And now with that, I'll pass it on to Davin.
Okay, so what do we accomplish? The first thing is we got to learn how to quickly ramp up on a new tool and language, which is going to be valuable going into the industry, considering how quickly things change. We learned about how Flutter works and how to make improvements to it. We also had a couple of changes that were actually incorporated into Flutter, which I could show you on the next slide. So basically, what this is Flutter allows developers to have access to a tool where you can represent a sliding bar that they might use in an app, like you'll see, like to adjust volume or something like that. And basically what was happening is that developers, they rely on specific info, in this case, to come back when the user moves the bar. And it was working fine when you use like a drag, but when you use key press, it wasn't working. So we looked in the code, and then the next slide will show like, so we're able to make changes, and now basically the developer is getting what they want. When this is using the key press now after the changes, they're getting to see what they want on the back end to do their work, or like behind the scenes. So yeah, that's just a demo of that working correctly. And then on the next slide, you can see that this like purple thing that says merge, that just means that this is like a example of a ticket that I submitted with the changes, and the Flutter team decided that they want to incorporate that in the code base. So that's what that merge means. They want to use the code in the tool. So that was the most exciting part of the project, being able to do that. And now we can say that we actually have code in a tool that people are using on a daily basis. So with that, I just want to thank the whole BS staff for all the guidance over the years, and special thanks to our mentor, David and Sweta, and the Mint team for setting the project up. Thank you. We'll take questions now.
Yeah, I'd be curious, you mentioned this is a huge project, like 10,000 lines of code, and it seems like you guys have managed to make some actual contributions pretty quickly to that. I'd be curious to know, like, what was your process, or how did you go about like learning or familiarizing yourself in order to make those changes in such a narrow time span?
So, I mean, like the beginning process was just familiarizing with like how it works in general, but like something very specific like that. What's nice in these Git issues is that people will have comments about like how you can reproduce the issue and how you can like troubleshoot it. There's like a whole thread going on about like potential ways you could look into it. So just, yeah, honing into that and trying to use that for like some detective work on like, okay, I need to read up on this specific thing. I need to, and then just in the code editor, like I need to search for this specific tool, and then so just doing detective work like that, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess going forward, so after working on an open source project like this, or like Flutter, going forward, is that something that you would pursue in like your downtime kind of thing, or like contributing to other open source projects?
Yeah, I think so, but I think it would have to be, because the challenge with this is I didn't really know like how to use Flutter in the first place. So I think if it's a tool that I use in my on a consistent basis in my work or something, then I'm going to want to be like, okay, I see that it could use some improvement here. So, but it is valuable experience to learn how it works, right, in general.
Just checking out a survey here, like developer survey 2022 for mobile app developers, 46% of mobile app developers use Flutter according to this source. And I'm looking at the GitHub repository, there's like 155,000 stars, like people kind of following that repository. So I think, yeah, a comment in the YouTube chat saying that this is, it's not a small feat to kind of dive into a large project and figure out how to contribute. My perspective on this is, I think all of us who kind of go into software development, this is kind of the experience we get in that first full-time experience. Is like, a code base already exists, it's large, and our first job is to make a small change, but to make that small change, you have to kind of start diving in and unwrapping and peeling that onion to figure out where does that change even go. So credit to the team for taking that on.
Thanks.
Awesome. Well, again, congratulations, Dean. Thanks for sharing with us. We appreciate your work. All right, we have 3 teams left. Next up is the Rustami Auto team.
Good evening, everyone. In our team, we have Adam, and Adam who couldn't make it today because of the traffic, and my name is Fauzia.
And we are working, or we work already on a multi-language pages for auto workshop, for Rustami Auto workshop. And our goal was to create a multilingual web page that enhances user experience, and specifically the focus was on three key aspects: creating a simple design layout and mobile-friendly web page, and also enabling language customization. And we have already selected 3 languages: English, Dari, and Pashto, and also provided flexibility to the client for future language, or they can add and remove some other languages that they want. And now I hand over this to Adam.
So during our development process, we had different levels of progression. To begin, we had meetings and mock-ups where I actually joined later on to the Community Auto Works team with another developer. So it started out with just Fazia and Aaron. And as me and another teammate, Hector, had joined on, we had to meet the client and get a grasp of what the project was going to be. In those first stages, we met and we were able to draw some mock-ups. As you'll notice on the page here, this was, thank you, MS Paint, for being able to be the tool that allowed us to draw up what our client wanted. In the weeks to come, we presented our mock-up and our client agreed that this was exactly what he wanted. Afterwards, we had creating the look and the actual design aspect of it. Our client wanted a web page that was easy to look at, pleasing to the eye, no distracting colors. It wanted to be something that was easy to navigate, as well as we would have many people from different communities, obviously speaking different languages, would be coming to the web page and would need some way to be streamlined in how the web page actually works and functions. After that, we wanted to reevaluate once we made our design decisions with our client. So we brought our mock-up to him and he said a great deal of great feedback, things that he liked, things that he didn't like, and our team was quick to make the adjustments to the things that he didn't like. And once we brought them back to him, he agreed that that's how the page should look. For the final part, we just wanted to tidy up any of our code, make sure that we leave documentation for any future developers. Documentation is just writing out the instructions of how the web page should work, because our goal for this project was to leave kind of a legacy. That way there's longevity to the web application. That way developers later on down the road can add new services and new languages. So issues that we resolved. One of the problems that we ran into, first off, was for the services page. If you can imagine for just a second, there are many languages out there and many services to be provided for the auto repair industry. As well as that, if you're trying to quantify a make, model, and year for a vehicle, that can get very hectic. As you see, there's a little mock-up of a math equation there. We had over 200,000 possible data entries, which is just bits of information for the different forms of languages for each one of the services for each make, model, and year of a vehicle. So when we brought this issue to our client, he actually said that was a good idea originally, but if we would like to pivot to just a simple descriptive page on the services, that would be a lot easier for him, his IT team, and for us on the initial development of the project. And so we pivoted and made that decision to scrap the layout of a make, model, year and just have a description box. The second issue that we resolved was an admin page. Originally, we wanted to give the functionality to edit and add languages over time from the website itself. But as we got later on to the project, we noticed that other resources were being allocated to other regions, such as the languages in the database to be able to store different languages. So we had to remove the admin page because we didn't want any security risks to be involved for the project. We didn't want some null benefactors to come in and add inappropriate languages, text, something that would be displeasing to our client. So we removed that and ultimately reduced our scope and made it a lot easier for us towards the end. Here we have a short presentation of what our page looks like and the functionality of it. To begin, this is the landing page. You'll see very quickly, I'll go up to the languages and I'll select Pushto. It'll swap any of the boxes to be selected. Those 6 in the middle are for services. That's a home button and a contact us page button. I'll swap back to English, that way I can show the navigation. So we wanted to make sure that the page was easily navigatable and looked nice. So we used big blue buttons to show off where all of the key buttons would be to navigate through the pages. This is the services page with the description box. Back to the home page. And for the contact us page, we included a Google Maps to show off where the business will be located, as well as contact information and a way to send an email if users have further information requests. So for the highlights of our project, we have languages that actually work and more can be added via the database. So once we hand this project off to our client, his IT team can go into the database, which is essentially just a box that holds all of the languages for each one of the pages, and they can add as many as they would like for all of the pages. Additionally, it can be adapted to include more or less services that the auto repair shop will be providing in the future. The email contact and being able to leave a message is nice for the clients in case they have further questions they'd like to ask or details that were not presented on the web page already. Services can be added over time. And again, a simple and easy to navigate design is what our client prioritized.
And this is the team who made it possible. We paid honestly, a lot of our time because the website was looking differently, but now it looks very different from the first time. And we really are thankful from our instructor and also our client and our mentors. Thank you so much. If you have any questions.
Awesome. Well, thanks, team. I wanted to ask, so had any of you had any experience both writing code and dealing with like multilingual support? How did you get started and what did you discover from this experience of even just storing data or trying to deal with different language versions of a website?
We might have different styles on how we came into that, but like I said, I joined the team late. I had no previous or prior experience with working with a multi-language web page, but I do know how to store information. I've been working on backend for multiple teams over my bachelor's career. So I just simply saw it as a project where, hey, we need to store the information. Doesn't matter what the information is. Finding out how to store it and how to access it in a very easy manner was how I undertook that. Fazia,
and also, I really didn't have any idea how to do it, but I did a little bit of research. And with the PHP, we just, translated, we added the English and then translated the translation part. And also I used a little bit of ChatGPT to, get some idea how to do it. And that's it. But it was new for us.
Nice comment from the YouTube, nice work. ChatGPT, how helpful was it?
Well, honestly, tell you is that's not 100% helpful, but at least it gives you some idea, how to do it, but not exactly the way you want.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of conversation out there right now about how developers will be using ChatGPT to kind of help in their work, just like
because most of the time, no, it doesn't work that way. So it breaks your code,
I was curious, it sounds like a lot of this project in sort of the client interaction side was figuring out or talking about trade-offs for various things. How did you go about having those conversations with who I assume is a non-technical client himself? How did you go about explaining those trade-offs or having those conversations?
So we had to use a lot of metaphors or similarities with our code. It was very difficult to come to our client and say, hey, we can't store Pushto in a database because we don't know how to change the language formatting, how you can store it in an SQL database. Now that in itself is a technical explanation for a non-technical person. So we had to bring it in a way where, without making it seem too simplified, look, we have a box and we can't put what you're asking us to into the box. Give us some time, we'll do some research, and ultimately we were able to figure out how to store that information into the box in the proper way. But yeah, as far as the explanations and the breakdowns go, we took our time and our client was completely cooperative and did his best to understand even when we had more technical terms. Just gave us the opportunity to explain it to him.
Thanks to Tyler, because he was the one who told us that, like, do not accept whatever he said, because first he was like, his expectation was really high. He was requesting us to do a chatbot, and that was like almost for us, like, it's impossible because we are newly graduated students. So thank you so much for that.
Sure. Any other questions, comments from the room?
Comment from YouTube, nice work. Nice work, team.
Thank you.
Would you say so everything's like written in English as far as the actual code goes, and then every time you use like different language, you just parse that in?
Exactly.
Yeah.
For our class here, we're using a PDO data layer. So as soon as the language gets swapped from the drop-down menu, it just pulls a request from the database and swaps everything out without having to reload the pages.
Yeah.
As far as multi-directional language, currently, not that I think of. No, not that I can think of. I believe Pashto, as far as I was putting into the database, from my understanding, it actually reads right to left. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So it does have right to left, but as far as like vertical, no, it does not.
Yeah, Dari and Pashto both are like from right to left.
Such an interesting project. And again, team, thanks so much for all your hard work and for sharing with us today.
Thank you.
All right, and we have one team left. Excuse me, we have two teams left. We're gonna next up have the healthcare pricing team, healthcare pricing. You'll move the list in the middle, right under the components.
Hi, so I'm Abdulkafi Tarsam and Hajar. We are doing ASP price check tracker. So this website, the issue that the client presented was each code in Medicare changes the amount that they allow to be paid on tax. It is going to be ASP, it is average sales price. So physicians and medical providers wants to know, they want to know like what the new price will be so that they can update their system on expected reimbursements and the amount that they will be getting. Without using this website, so the data that exists, it is on CMS.gov website. It is a government website, and they publish this data quarterly based on the submitted information from the manufacturers of the drugs. And so without using this website, it's very tough. And so providers and physicians should download the file and extract it into a spreadsheet and compare the drug prices that they want to see. And we found a solution for that. And it is a website that users can log in and look up the drugs using J-code. J-code is a unique ID that's assigned to each drug, or they can use the partial names of the drug to search and they can enter the date range of what orders they want to see. So I'm gonna pass to Archie.
Yeah, so for our highlights, we are proud of completing the functionality for the search tool that our client asked us for, and for the password reset option in case the user forgets their password when logging in. And some realizations we came across was changing the date format inside of our database, because that did affect our Excel spreadsheets and how the information was displayed back. So fixing that issue helped return the table with the information of each drug, and to help healthcare providers compare the drug increase and decrease between the drugs.
So we'll run through a brief showcase demo. We'll kind of walk through some of the functionalities that we worked through. So this is the site we worked on. So first, we go to admin. I'll sort of kind of run through an overview of what the site basically does. As Abdi mentioned, every quarter there's a new Excel sheet that will contain all of the information for the various different types of drugs. So the admin will go in and upload the file, and which will basically have all the information stored within the database, and that will allow users to search up whatever drug they want by its code. So we'll show the example of that. So if we go to the homepage, someone will go to the homepage and they will want to look up maybe a certain drug, and they'll type in the unique J code to look up whatever that they're searching for. So it will display like the quarter, the year, other type of information you might want to see. So initially, this was the basic functionality of the search tool, but based on our client feedback, he wanted a feature where, say, you don't know what the code is, so you might be able to search by name. And so you would be able to type in even a partial name. Let's say you don't know exactly what the spelling is, and maybe if you're looking at rabies or something, and you just type in a partial, so it will return, you will get a table, a list of all of the drugs that contain that partial name. And so that was a change we implemented. Our client had further feedback for us, where we ran into an issue where there were certain codes which contained both letters and numerical values, and that was giving us problems. Our program wasn't able to read that. So we were able to come up with a solution. And so when we input that, we were able to get that return. So this is on the homepage. If you're logged in as a user, this is if the user would go through and register, they would be able to log in with their credentials. And you will see in a minute, the search functionality after you're logged in lets you search up for multiple drugs. So you can enter in whatever you're looking for. And then you also have the option to search by quarter, any quarter of the year. And when you submit the information, you're able to see a list of all the entries. And the advantage of this is that you're able to compare the drug prices between different drugs and the quarter. So the physicians get a gauge on if their drug prices are changing or increasing or decreasing quarterly. So yeah, with that, so thank you so much. I wanted to thank the Minerva staff, our client. Where's Alex? We want to thank Alex. We reached out to him during our little technical issue we had with our database, our format issue, and he was kind enough to coordinate with us and help us tackle that issue. So thanks so much.
Team, so it seems like you were dealing with drug pricing trends, things like that over time. What was it like to I think your client in this case probably knew a lot about this area, like drug prices and things like that, and you did not know so much. What was it like interacting with this client, and what type of feedback did you get that was maybe a challenge for you, or maybe was easy for you to take and run with?
Yeah, so, sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. So working with a client that probably has a lot of knowledge about this area, what was it like for you to try to take feedback from this client? What was maybe some clear and easy feedback that you got, and what was some other things that were maybe challenging in working with this client?
Yeah, the challenging part was sometimes like we would email him with like questions or like, and then it wouldn't really, he would reply to us, but it wouldn't really answer our question. So we sometimes providing like screenshots or during our actual client meeting, if we would like show him a walkthrough through what we're trying to ask a question for, would help us. And yeah, we would get our answers that way.
Yeah, we also had professional communication with our client, and she was responsible for applying and getting answers from the client, and helping using actual deployment we get from our instructors.
Very cool. Having somebody step up, I think, is always helpful because clients can have a lot of different wants or needs, or have a tough time maybe talking on the technical side, or a tough time maybe sharing with you some of the industry knowledge they have in their area as well. Yeah. Questions, comments, thoughts?
I'll piggyback off of that a little bit. I think it's really understated and underrated how important of a skill it is for us as developers to be able to write the good bug report so that someone else can understand enough to fix it. So, hearing your story about your client, maybe not fully understanding what you're asking. I think when we're on the receiving end of that, when someone says to me, hey, this feature doesn't work. Well, it'd be nice if I got the details. So yeah, things like screenshots, having a walkthrough, doing those things, it's an essential skill for developers. So I hope that, being on the flip side of that, you can carry that forward into your work.
Yeah, it kind of forced us to put on like different hats. We weren't just developers coding away. It kind of forced us to learn how to communicate with people. Someone may not be as tech savvy and they may not understand all the jargon and whatnot. So it kind of like forced us, okay, if they didn't understand, how do we follow up to their follow-up? Like how can, in like a professional manner, like, how can we like show them, hey, this is what we're actually talking about? So it was a learning experience for all of us.
Yeah, and since we struggled with that a bit, we made sure that our documentation is as clear as possible so that our client understands it.
Super thoughtful. I think. Yeah. Any other comments from the room?
I'd be curious, were there any major sort of changes or pivots that happened along the way to your initial conception of the app versus what it ended up looking like, and sort of like what were those and how did you go about handling them?
I think so initially, there were definitely, like we mentioned, there were some things in the starting, like the client kind of mentioned, and like kind of just threw out there that, hey, maybe this is something we want to do, but we were kind of forced to look at the whole scope of it. It is something that we can actually manage and accomplish at the end of the day, and have it done in a reasonable amount of time. And I think like there were some things like, I won't get into like super detailed, but there were things that initially, like our client kind of proposed to us, okay, let's see if we can add this functionality. But when we went into the actual into the page and saw, hey, some of these functionalities already work. Like it's already there. So we don't actually need to work on this. We can focus our time on something else. So definitely it kind of forced us to look at the project as a whole, so we don't waste our time on something like that.
All right. Again, thanks team. Thanks for sharing all your work. We really appreciate it. All right. And our final team to present tonight will be the guided practice team.
Us.
Cool. Hello, everyone. My name is Nathan. This is Sam. This is Connor. This is Pavel. Together, we developed Project Whalesong for our client Eleven Trees. Project Whalesong is an LTI application built for the campus learning management system, created to improve the peer review system for teachers and students. LTI is short for Learning Tools Interoperability, and LTI applications are external programs that can be used within learning management systems like Canvas. From an educational standpoint, peer review is one of the most powerful techniques teachers can use to increase student engagement. A valuable benefit to students reviewing each other's work is that it also decreases the grading workload of instructors. If executed properly, teachers can coach while students learn through the process of providing feedback to each other. However, peer review takes time and effort to set up and manage. Project Whalesong is the solution to this problem by integrating peer review into the Canvas LMS while maintaining the privacy and security of user information with the One EdTech LTI 1.3 specifications. Our application allows instructors to build peer reviewable assignments that they can assign to their students using just their Canvas login credentials, which the app leverages for OpenID Connect and OAuth 2.0 for authentication and authorization. Our application also allows students to access Project Whalesong assignments and provide feedback to their fellow classmates. Project Whalesong is a proof of concept for our client to test the possibilities of peer review functionality in learning management systems across many academic institutions and has successfully brought 11 Trees peer review concept into a working prototype. And now I'll pass things off to my teammate Pavel to discuss some of the hurdles we had to overcome in order to create what we are about to show you.
One of the hurdles that we had to get over is with the knowledge that our client had some experience with programming. We had to make sure that the framework we chose is one that he could maintain himself. And so we ended up choosing a very basic PHP framework and a front end that he himself has some experience with through other means. And one of the first steps that we took when creating this project is figuring out who would be working the back end, the behind the scenes of the project, and the front end, the app itself. And another hurdle that we had to get over with is the actual connection of the application itself to Canvas. There's a guidelines that we're supposed to follow to keep our application secure when connecting through Canvas. And that took a little bit of time for us to work through. And so while the backend was working on that, the front end could continue working on some of the stuff that would be visible to a teacher or a student. And displayed on the screen right now is one of the first instances of a questionnaire form that a teacher would be able to use to send to their students. And then on the next page, the backend was finally able to connect our application into Canvas. And as you can see, there's just a wall of text that is information that we're able to grab from Canvas that we can then use in our application. And I'll be handing it off to Sam to demo.
Before we jump into our video, I'm going to explain 3 terms. The first one is survey. So that is the part that a student themselves will fill out. Then project is what a teacher will fill out that decides due date and stuff like that. And when we say the word assignment, we mean the survey attached to the project and that together. Now we're going to jump into the video. So it's going to move a little quickly. We start with the instructor logging in, and then they'll navigate to the course they teach and then the guided practice tab. So here they're going to fill out a brand new project with a brand new survey. So they give a project description, and then they're about to enter the date that it is due and enter the points it's worth. And then they save the project, and then they're going to create a new survey for the student to fill out. And so this shows our yes, no, and our free response question. So a free response question would be an essay style format, and then yes, no is a smaller multiple choice. And then they're now going to hit create, and then it's displayed within the table of projects. So now we're going to show an instructor making a brand new survey. So this survey is going to show the multiple choice question, which is our 3rd type of question, which we didn't see on the previous survey. So an instructor can add up to 10 choices. And then by clicking the trash can on the right, they can delete a choice, which you're about to see.
And now we're going to go back to the project table and we're going to select a project that was already there and attach the survey we just made to that project. Now we're going to click go, which publishes the survey to Canvas. And now we're going to see what the student can view. So here's all the multiple choice questions. And then here are the other questions. And now I'm going to pass it off to Connor.
Get you back in there. All right, and before we start the next video, we'll take you through a nice sandy moonlit walk through the student experience. We do have roles segregated between instructors and students, so if you're logging in as a student, you're not going to be able to do any of this stuff that an instructor can. Yeah, you can't go in and create assignments for other students to do. All right, go ahead and start that. First off, you will see.
Oh, wait, I hit F11 and it did not do what my computer does.
I set her up. Yeah, first we'll see a student logging in. They're going to see a little student landing page, which will give them access to all of the assignments that have been created through the application. They could access them through there and fill them out and submit them if they want. We'll also see that you can access those directly through the Canvas assignment section like you guys do during classes. You get to watch somebody fill in their own assignment data. Once this actually passes all the validations, like each question has to be filled in. You won't be able to press that submit button until all of those meet the standards, whether that's a minimum character requirement of 50 or just clicking something. After that, you'll see that we've parsed the data from this and put that directly into Canvas's database. You'll see a flash of the submission. And then we're going to show you the second half of this, which would be another student logging in and being able to actually do a peer review of that existing submission that was just put into Canvas. So they'll go in and they will select an assignment that is set up as a peer review. They'll see, hey, did somebody submit this? Hey, 2 people submitted these, 4 people. You can see all the submission data in one tab and they can go right back over to their actual assignment tab and they can fill in all of the review stuff they would like to fill in. After that, they will, assuming they've done all of the questions, be able to submit that, and the submission data will have a little flag that shows, hey, this is the student that I just did this peer review of. And here is our submission. All right, I think that's about all we would like to show you as far as a demo. So just wanted to give a big shout out to Andrew, the founder of 11 Trees, who we were doing this project for. All around good guy, but also very nice to work with. Just he has a real good vision for instruction. I think he used to be an instructor and now apparently does other cool things. But also, thanks to all our instructors here. You guys done a great job. And yeah, you guys want to shout anybody out?
I think you got
Your cat? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Perfect. All right, any questions?
So team, you mentioned this is a proof of concept, but from what I can see, there's a lot of features built in. So if you had to say, like, if this was going to be something going out to the world, first of all, did you start from 0 on this, and kind of like what % of the way do you think you are to actually a full like working product? Because it really seems like you've covered a lot of the bases so far.
Well, we probably should have added a slide in there that showed that we started with a blank page, just like maybe a picture of a note or something. But yeah, we're pretty darn close to a fully functioning product. There are definitely a few rough edges that we need to clean up and such, but yeah, I mean, the system is there. The other side to this is all through these LTI specs. We can't access any assignments that are outside of the LTI ecosystem. So yeah, there's just another way of implementing a different type of access token. It'll get you access to all this other stuff, which Andrew knows all about. He actually has a lot of experience with that stuff. So yes, this works though.
There's more roadblocks than we thought there would be, and a lot of those would probably be broken through if this application was remade. We have a lot of documentation of the LTI spec and all that stuff. We've made sure to document everything as much as we could through our progress with the application. So if someone did want to go through with this and create a new application, they could with everything that we've documented.
Yeah, in addition to that, we kind of prioritize functionality over UI. So I think someone's going to come behind us, make it look a little bit prettier, which will be nice.
Yeah, if you start adding just a bunch of projects, that table is just going to be
become very difficult to navigate through. So there's definitely some fine tuning that could go on to like mass production, but also it's just one instructor making just a handful of projects that I think really work out pretty well.
As a teacher myself, I can say, yeah, we'll probably pile up a lot of different assignments and projects and whatever you might have in that system.
Yeah, some interesting comments on questions on YouTube. We have it says 11 trees will be working to get this to the world, at least as a beta to existing clients. Yeah, a comment on well executed design, user friendly, yeah, impressive. Question: how did you set up a development learning management system? They're assuming that you did not use a live one.
Right. So initially what we had was I hosted my own version of Canvas through Docker on my local system, on a cloud system that I have that I use for personal stuff. And at some point ended up crashing. And we don't know what the issue was. The error was really vague. And so eventually we ended up just settling with setting up through AWS.
Yeah.
And there's like a one-click solution that Connor had found online, and we ended up just going with that, and it ended up working better for us.
And previous to that, we had this nice fiddly, not very great version in GitHub Codespaces. I mean, it got us along for a while, but that was.
Yeah, there's a way to host like a local version of Canvas through GitHub Codespaces. We tried working through that. The documentation was subpar, so there wasn't too much that you could do with that.
Typical, yeah.
I tried editing like the wiki. You can do that and gave some changes and maybe help someone in the future, but otherwise, yeah.
I think I saw a hand back here.
How did you guys do with Canvas? Kind of got answered, but my other question was going to be, how would you manage 4 developers and your GitHub like organization? How do you manage? I see front and back end. You guys split 2 and 2. With your pushes, your merge times, how do you guys finish them?
For the GitHub aspect, the backend itself was in its own repository, and so was the front end. We ended up going with the process of each person would create a new branch for any new feature that they wanted to add. They would create a PR for that branch, merge it, delete the branch, and this would cycle on. And so we would have a main branch that had no direct pushes sometimes, but it's okay. So back in and front end, each push was based on a pull request, just so that the main branch itself was perfectly fine.
A nice trunk-based development.
Yeah.
Good time.
One more question from YouTube. Since the feedback to students is stored in Canvas's database, does Canvas's architecture allow for an app like GP to aggregate all the feedback provided to a specific user, even if it's across different courses, or is it contained to one course?
Not really, because we're trying to be as secure with everything as possible. We don't want to store any of that submission data outside of Canvas. So we're completely leveraging Canvas's database for anything that's being submitted, right? Like the templates, the survey templates, the project templates, all that stuff, that's being stored in the application database elsewhere. But yeah, we would not be able to. You could pull that stuff out, like right now, be able to pull all submission data for any given assignment from everybody in a course. And there are ways to get outside of the course too. Not inter-institution though, but yeah.
And through the LTI 1.3 framework, API, whatever, it limits you to only the things that the account itself can see and use. So if a teacher ends up creating a bunch of projects for a specific course, theoretically, if we set it up that way, they could also view those projects for a different source if we filter it properly. I think one of the core, depending on how we go about it, it could be either or. Same with the student. The student can't see anything that they don't have access to through the LTI API.
Yeah, I'll add a little additional comment there. I think there's what's possible technically, and then what's also allowable in the institution as well, right? So I know it's depending on the institution. I know where we are here, each course is independent, and you can't have instructors look into other people's courses because we want to evaluate you without any prior thing, but that's not true at every institution, right? So yeah. One more question here, I think we can wrap up with this one. Is if you could start over, what would you do differently?
We would work directly with the Canvas API instead of working through LTI 1.3. One of the goals that the client had was to have the app work through any LMS system. So like Blackboard or Canvas or any other ones. And that was the goal behind only using LTI 1.3. But it's limited in itself, and there's only so much you can do with that API. And so I feel like if I were to take hold of this again, I would work directly with Canvas. And maybe if there's any other integrations that we wanted to do, look into like say the Blackboard API and see what they themselves can hand to us directly.
Yeah, I'd probably try to sleep more.
Sleep, yeah. There was a lot of research for this, especially through LTI. LTI is not documented very well. And so everything that we've documented will be very helpful to the client for any future endeavors with this project.
One last comment from YouTube, deep appreciation of the team and so all persistent creativity, so.
All right.
And thanks teams for all of your hard work and all of your. So I'll briefly just conclude these presentations, at least what we're sharing online. Again, we want to thank all teams. We had 8 teams represented today. We also want to again say congratulations and thanks to all the students that are part of these teams, as well as those other students who have worked on independent projects, as well as those who are working full time. So with that, give yourselves a big round of applause. And with that, we'll conclude our formal presentation portion. We do have a couple extra comments that we'll make after. So Ken, we'll let you close things out there. We can find the stop button.